What's up, everyone? Welcome back. So today's video is going to be on neck training and why a lot of boxers are potentially missing one of the most critical components of neck training and how they can actually integrate this into their neck training. But first, we're going to jump into why you actually need to strengthen your neck for boxing, some research on what the research says, and then we're going to get into my three-step approach for how you can actually improve the strength, neuromuscular control, and the rate of force development of your neck. So we can hopefully mitigate some injury risk around concussion and injuries to the neck. So when we look at the research on neck strength training, the research is quite conflicting. So there are some studies that say it's super beneficial to reduce the risk and severity of concussion. And then on the other hand, some studies say there is no benefit at all. But I think this ultimately comes down to the methods that are used within these studies. So, the different cohorts that are used, or just looking at the correlation between neck strength and injury risk. But ultimately, I think regardless of these results, I think the general consensus is that it probably provides some benefit, albeit small, compared to not doing anything at all, which in my personal opinion, I think there is large value in doing this because for a sport like boxing where you're copping impact to the head on a daily basis, I think that you should be training the area around the head and the neck to be as robust and strong as possible to meet the demands of your sport. So because of this association between increased neck strength and reduced risk of concussion and severity of concussion, a lot of people turn to neck training. Everyone would have seen the classic videos of Mike Tyson doing his neck bridges or Canelo using the neck harness through doing some extensions and flexions. And I think there is large value in doing these because strength will play the foundational role for developing all other qualities like rate of force development and neuromuscular control and all these other things. I think there is a large part of neck training that is typically missed in your standard neck exercises. And this is also confirmed in the research where strength is important, but time and time again in these studies, what they suggest is, although strength is important, potentially more important is rate of force development and neuromuscular control. And I think that's one thing that is typically missed in these neck training programs for boxing, because having a strong neck will be key because strength will mean that your neck can produce more force. But in a sport like boxing where you're having to react to your opponent's fist hitting your head, then potentially having muscles that can produce force really quickly and react to that external force will be more important for reducing, excessive whiplash and actually having the head move at high velocities, which is going to be one of the key things that cause a concussion or for your brain to hit the skull, which is one of the mechanisms of a concussion. So like I said, strength is 100% important, and all throughout my neck training programs, there will be some element of strength in there. But I think the missing element of most neck strength training programs is the rate of force development side of things and the neuromuscular control side of things. So anyway, let's dive into my three-step approach for how I actually prescribe neck training for boxers. So my first step in my three-step approach is isometrics. So these are a great way to introduce people to neck training as they can be done at varying intensities and volumes to build that foundational strength that you'll need before you get into more movement-based options. So one of the main reasons I like starting with isometrics is because people can feel quite sore when they start doing neck training, and no one wants to have a super sore neck. When you're holding yourself in that guard position in boxing, the traps can get overactive and a bit sore. Even sleeping with a sore neck can be quite uncomfortable. So I think that's where isometrics come in, and very foundational isometrics or basic isometrics can come in to introduce your neck to some load before getting into those more intense variations. So there's a million different ways you can start with these and progress with these, but some nice options are some wall-leaning med ball isos, even some quasi-based isometrics. Once you've got those down packed, then you can move into more neck bridge holds on the bench. So in the prone, supine positions, even the lateral based positions. But like I said, I think isometrics are a good way to start because you can build that foundational strength that will be needed further down the line, but without the associated muscle damage that you might get from more isotonic based variations that you typically see where we're moving the head through range under load. So the next step is isotonics. And so this is basically where you're training the neck through its full range of motion. So typically how the neck muscles act within boxing will be an isometric contraction, but I do think there's a large value in doing isotonic based variations. But what isotonics can do that isometrics can't is that we can start to load the muscles through their full range of motion. And this is going to be really key for actually building some muscle mass around the neck. And so improving the muscle mass around the neck can then also improve the strength around the neck. So this is why I think it's important that some isotonics and especially loaded isotonics are useful in a neck strengthening program. So when we're actually doing isotonics, I think it's important that you're hitting all the major muscles groups around the neck, but also hitting the traps, because the upper trap specifically attached to the base of the skull. So this is also going to help with stabilizing the head on impact with a punch. So a really great one for developing the upper traps is going to be a snatch grip barbell shrug. Some research shows that using the snatch grip, so a wider grip than you usually would with a shrug, gets higher activation of the upper traps. And because we're using the barbell, it means that you can load it up a lot heavier than what you usually would, meaning we can get an extra strength and hypertrophy stimulus to those upper traps. And then moving into some more directed neck work, everyone would have seen it. So the videos of like Canelo and Mayweather doing neck harness-based flexions, extensions. If you don't have a neck harness, then you can just do standard neck flexions and extensions just with a weight plate. And then you can also move into neck lateral flexions with a dumbbell. And then the last step for our 3-step approach is going to be reactive isometrics. Like I alluded to earlier, this is going to be one of the most missed aspects of neck training for boxers. A lot of the time you see most people having some form of neck training, so whether it's loaded neck flexions and extensions, some basic isometric work, but I think having a reactive element within their training is something that is commonly missed. And what the research says that this might actually be the most important thing to reduce the risk of concussion, as we want muscles around the neck that can produce force in an instant on the impact of a punch. This is typically where strength alone won't be enough to reduce the risk of those concussions, because we're not developing the reactivity and the rate of force development of the neck muscles that control the head. We want muscles that can react quickly to the impact of a punch and produce counteracting forces, so the brain basically doesn't move around inside the head, as this is going to be one of the key mechanisms for a concussion. So when we're actually trying to improve the rate of force development and neuromuscular control of the neck muscles, I like to use reactive isometrics. The reason I wouldn't use reactive isotonic-based exercises, as there is a large load going through the neck. So adding that extra element of range of motion might just be a little bit too risky. So this is where I think reactive isometric options are going to be a lot better for developing that rate of force development, because we can do it in a safe manner where the head is fixed, but changing the loading pattern of the movement. So how I like to actually do this is through perturbation-based movements and drop catch-based movements. So perturbation-based movements are where we're holding that fixed isometric-based movement. So this could be things like the neck bridge holds, but we're having a weight plate or a dumbbell and we're just moving around in different directions. So as we're moving the weight around in the perturbations, the neck muscles are having to produce counteracting forces so we can really stabilize the head. So next we're going to use drop catch variations, and these are probably going to be the most intense isometric variations that you'll do on the neck. However, this is going to be the most specific to boxing, as we're having to create large and really quick forces to counteract the force of the dropping dumbbell. So when we're dropping the dumbbell in these drop catch variations, it's going a lot quicker than what it usually would if we were just lowering it down, which means that these neck muscles are having to produce large and really quick forces to counteract that force of the dropping dumbbell. So again, like I mentioned, this is probably going to be one of the most commonly missed aspects of neck training that I think all boxers really need to be doing, as you need neck muscles that can produce force very quickly, and traditional strength exercises probably don't provide that stimulus. So just to recap my 3-step approach, we start with isometrics to build that foundational strength. Then we move into isotonics to improve that strength further, but then also start to develop some muscle mass around the neck. And then lastly, we have reactive isometrics to really develop rate of force development and neuromuscular control. By the way, if you haven't already checked it out, I just dropped a full 8-week neck training program so you can improve your neck strength, rate of force development, and neuromuscular control so you can reduce the risk and severity of concussions. The link to that program is in the description below. And that's us for today. Make sure you like and subscribe. And if you've got any questions, put them in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.